another episode of Code Club. In today's episode, we will be making this stacked bar plot. It's kind of an infographic, if you will, just because of some of the styling, but we're going to make this stacked bar chart titled What Americans Die From and the Causes of Death the U.S. Media Reports On. As it says in the logo in the upper right corner here, it comes from the website Our World in Data. If you are joining the live stream, please tell us where you are joining from. Feel free to say hi. I love for these live streams to be interactive and kind of give me your questions, and I can use those questions or your ideas or suggestions to kind of direct the flow of today's live stream. There's no reason to do them live if I don't have an audience that's watching live. So anyway, as I said, this visualization came to us from Our World in Data. I'll go ahead and copy this link down here in the chat. And if you want to get the link and you're watching it later, it will be down below in the description for this video that you can go to and find it out there. See, we've already got people joining from Canada and from England. Welcome. Hope you don't mind the US-centric visualization today. I know we always have a great international audience for these, and I just love that. So if you have seen this visual before, or you've seen me talk about it, that could become because of, I guess, maybe three reasons. So first, you might be really well read, and you might look at this website on your own, Our World in Data. It's great. It's got a lot of visualizations and a lot of data. That's why I love it, is that if I see a visualization, I'm pretty confident I can get the data behind it. The other thing might be that you saw my video on Monday, just 2 days ago, where I did a critique of this visualization, where you learned that, in general, I really loathe stacked bar charts like this. In my field of microbiome research, they are very common, and I hate them. I have never seen a good stacked bar chart in the microbiome literature. In that video on Monday, if you want to go check it out after this is over, you'll hear me talk about why I think this might actually work, although it does still have shortcomings. And a third reason you may have seen this before is because you might be on my newsletter. So if you go to rifamonas.org and come down to the bottom, you can see that you can join the mailing list. Again, I'll go ahead and copy and paste that link here into the chat. All right. And then if you join the mailing list, then every week I send out a newsletter where I talk about some data visualization that I have found out in the wild, and I describe how I would go about recreating that visualization from kind of a 30,000 foot view. Maybe that's 10,000 meters. I don't know. So let me go ahead and copy and paste this down in. And also from that newsletter, you'll learn other things that I've got planned and things that I've got going along the way in creating content here on YouTube for you all. So anyway, I think this is going to be a rather lengthy video. I don't know if it's going to be lengthy necessarily, but it's going to be a hard recreation. And so we need to go ahead and dig into that. So again, this is the stacked bar plot that we are going to make. As always, we want to know where are the data that we can get to load this. And so down at the bottom, I talked about this in my critique video, that there is a methodology box here. So if I go ahead and click on that, and you'll see that it says this is the methodology for the data analysis used in our article. Does the news reflect where we die from? What we die from, not where, right? And so you can also browse the code, and you can get the data files here. And so this is, as I see in the bottom left corner, a zipped archive. So before I dig into that, we've got Leonard from Germany, Mike also from the UK, and Saeed joining from Somalia. So our regulars, great to see you. If you're new, don't be bashful. Feel free to say hi along the way. All right, so I've got a mediadeaths.r script open in our studio here. I'm going to go ahead and add library tidyverse and get that all loaded. Now, normally when I find a situation where there is a data file that I want to get, and it's a zip file like this one is, I will often download it to the directory that I'm working in. I want to show you how we can do this without manually downloading it. How can we automate it using R? So I'm going to go ahead and do that. So I'll go ahead and copy the link address. I'll then come and paste that here in my mediadeaths.r. So I'll say data URL, just to kind of give it a shorter name, get that loaded. And then there's a function in R called download file, and I can give it the URL as well as the destination file. So I'll do data URL, and then I'm going to call it this, right? So this is going to be the destination file name, okay? And that is a string, so that needs to be in quotes. Downloading that, and then if I all right, so in my Files tab over here, I now see that I've got that zip directory that I didn't have there before, okay? So we've downloaded it, but now, of course, it's a zip directory. So how are we going to undo that? Well, wouldn't you know it, there is a unzip file function. And maybe I'll go ahead and call this data zip so that I don't have to copy and paste that same name over and over. And so I can then put data zip in here, add back my quote mark, get that loaded. I've got that downloaded, and then we can do unzip data zip. And now we see that we have a data directory over here. And if we click on that, we see all of the files from our world in data from that data directory from that zip file, right? And so we have downloaded the data and unzipped it into my media deaths directory that I am using for recreating this visualization. All right. Welcome, Patrick from Kenya and Hassan from, I think, West Virginia. So Mike asks, is there a good way to have a template in our studio so you don't always have to add the same thing to your script? Probably. I mean, I think you could probably create a template R script and copy that over and over. I've never done that. Usually, the only thing I'm copying over and over again is library tidyverse, which isn't, I don't feel that hard to keep working with. So, yeah, I'm not sure if other people have ideas. Feel free to put it in the comment for Mike. It'd be interesting to see what other people are doing. So, again, in here, we have two CSV files. So there's mediadeaths mentions.csv, mediadeaths results.csv. I'm not sure which one I want. So it's easy enough to hopefully figure out. We can do read underscore CSV. And then the nice thing about working in an IDE like RStudio is that I can start typing the path. So I know it's like data / media. And then if I hit tab, this dialog window opens up. And I'm not interested in these PNGs. I'm interested in the CSVs. So let's look at mentions.csv. And we run that. And we see the year, the source, the cause, the mentions, and the single mentions. So they defined in their analysis a mention as a article that showed up, that had a mention of a disease or cause of death 2 or more times, right? So if the article only mentioned it once, they didn't really count that. Their analysis was on mentions. And so I want to see if it has all of the sources. So I'll do count source. And so this then has Fox News, New York Times, Washington Post, and US collection. And the US collection, I'm fairly certain, is these 3 all aggregated together. So I don't think this is what I want. Instead, let's look at media deaths results. .csv, and I'm not sure if it's got the source column in there, but what we see is it doesn't have a source column, all right? And so, again, it's got the cause, the year, so this is all from 2023, so that's really not useful because it's going to be the same across everything. It's got deaths, so these are going to be the actual deaths, right? That is going to be the data that shows up in this left-hand column. All right, so we've got deaths, death share, Fox mentions, New York Times mentions, WashPo mentions, and then we've got all these mentions, and then we've got the shares, okay? And so I'm pretty sure what we want are the shares. So let's go ahead and do a select, and we'll do a select for the cause, and then I'm going to do share. And there's two types of share, right? So there's the single share, and then there's the basic share, right? And so what we might do, well, let's use a special helper function with select. And so I'll do ends with share. And so now this gets us our cause, our death share, our Fox share, New York Times share, WashPo share, and then that US share, right? That was what was in that other file. It's like kind of the, I think the average of all of these. And then it's got like the single share. So this is turning out to be perhaps, what I could do would be to do like select, or actually maybe I could put it in here, right? So could I then do not contains single? And that didn't help me at all. All right. So I think what I'll do, instead of using these helper functions, is just write out the columns I want. And so I want deaths share, Fox share, NYT share, WAPO share. And then that's going to get me the columns that I want. Again, the cause, and then the various shares. One thing that is nice about select is that we can use select to rename our columns, right? So I'll call the first US equals death share, or maybe I'll call it actual. So that's like the actual causes of death, right? And then for Fox share, I'll do Fox equals Fox share, NYT equals NYT share, and then WAPO equals WAPO share, okay? And that way, I don't have to worry about that underscore share. There's other ways to do it, of course, but let's do this with the select function. And so now what we find is that we've renamed our columns, okay? So LC Paulson says, aren't there snippets you can create in RStudio? There must be. Let's see. If we do file, I will have to look for that. New file, code. Let's see. Do you say where it is? Okay, still caffeinating. Yeah, I don't. I'll have to look. That seems like a pretty useful tool. Like if there's something that you're doing over and over again, right? I'll have to look myself, right? So insert section. Yeah, that's not what we want. All right. So maybe we'll come back to that another time. But so now what we have is we have our tibble that's got 15 rows. So there's 15 causes of death and 5 columns. And again, all the data is from 2023, so I don't need to include the year. But this data is not tidy, right? So to make it tidy, we would want the cause of death, we would want the source, and then we would want the share, okay? So let's go ahead and pivot longer to make it tidy. And we'll do everything but the cause column, we're going to pivot longer. And then we'll do names 2 equals source, values 2 equals share. And so now, as we can see, we have 60 rows and 3 columns. So again, there's 60 rows because there's 15 causes of death and there are 4 sources. So that makes sense. Then we have cause, source, and share. Our data is tidy. Now we are ready to feed this into ggplot2. Great to have you, Sid, joining from Sweden. I think I missed you earlier, but thank you. Great to have you all. So let's go ahead and feed this into ggplot2. And so I have made a resolution for this episode is that I am going to wait as long as possible to use the theme function, okay? There's a lot of cool theming stuff we could do, or we'll need to do, but let's focus on the geomes before we move on to those other things. So I want to kind of work out all of the geomes that we need to add to make the plot. Again, this is the plot that we're going for here. All right, so maybe before we go ahead and put in our ggplot2 code, we could go ahead and put in our ggsave statement so that we can make the plot the same aspect ratio and the same size as theirs. So I've done this before, and if I do file on media deaths original.png, it's 3600 by 2541, and so as always, I want it to be 6 inches wide. And so we want to know the height. And And, oh, it's upset with me because I have this pipe at the end. So let me go ahead and copy and paste it down, 4.235. So we'll call this media deaths.png, width equals 6, height equals 4.235. All right. And so that will be the file that we will be saving, and it will be the same dimensions as the original. And so I'm doing this in inches. That's what I typically do. Again, I'm typically making files or making images that I would use for like a presentation or for a paper. And so for like a paper, there's usually instructions to authors telling you how big the file should be in terms of, or how, the dimensions of that figure. So, and I work in inches rather than centimeters, but hey, you could do centimeters too, I'm sure. All right, so let's get this into ggplot2. Great to have you, James, from Toronto. And it looks like Leonard found under Tools, there's Edit Code Snippets. Cool. All right. So we will then do, we will go ahead and do ggplot, AES. On the x-axis, as we can see, we want the source. And got ahead of myself there. The y, we want the share. And the fill, we're going to have the cause. Okay. So again, this aesthetic function, AES function, tells ggplot what column in our data we want to map to different aesthetics or elements of our plot. So then we can do geom call to make a column or a bar, a stacked, by default, it will be a stacked bar plot. And so as you can see over here, we have a stacked bar plot, but let's see what it looks like with the PNG that I outputted. And so that's this file here, mediadeaths.png. And so again, you can see it is the same size as this here. And it's a start, right? So that's great. One other geom another geom we're gonna have to add will be the text. But one thing that I am thinking about is that we have two groups, right? So there's the media groups over here on the right, and then there's the actual causes of death in the US in 2023 over on the left. And I think what I will do is go ahead and pull those apart using a facet, right? And so we could make a facet be like the actual versus the media, and we could add that column. So it could be like type, and then we could facet on type to get the actual on the left and the media on the right, and then they'd have that natural separation between the two groups of bars. So again, we can do that back up here, and I will do that after my pivot longer. I'll do a mutate to make a type column. I'll do if else. So if the source is actual, then I want it to be actual. Otherwise, it's going to be media. Okay. And so if we run that, we then see that the actual is of type actual, and the Fox, New York Times, and WAPO are media. Okay. Then what we can do is add facet wrap, and we'll facet by the type. And I'm getting a weird indentation, which tells me I have forgotten something somewhere. And sure enough, I forgot to put a pipe after this mutate statement here on line 19. And so now when I redo the line break, it indents properly. And so now what we see is that we do have two facets, right? We have the facet for the actual and the facet for the media. The nice thing about picking actual as a name is that it automatically puts it on the left because it will lay the facets out alphabetically, right? So if I would have named this something like, US, right? Then we'd have media and then US. Let me show you that actually. So if I call this US, then it flips the order, right? So it's doing it alphabetically. And so sometimes you can pick names that help you in the long run. So if I put this back to actual, then we get the actual on the left and media on the right. But of course, we've got various sources that, like the media sources are showing up under the actual, although I don't have any data for that, and the actual source is showing up under the media type. So we want to get rid of those. So how do we do that? Well, I'm glad you asked. So we can do free, or we can do scales. Scale equals free underscore x. And so what that will do is this will remove the sources in each of the type that don't have data. So it will remove Fox News, New York Times, Washington Post from actual, and actual from the media. So just to prove it to you, we now see that we've got this, right? But the problem then is that the actual is really wide. It is making the actual facet width the same width as the media facet, right? What I want is I want the stacked bar of actual to be the same width as the stacked bars for each of the media type, right? And so to do that, there is a new argument in facet wrap that we can use that is called size. And we'll do free x on that. So this is a new feature in ggplot2 version 4 that I think we've talked about already in previous episodes, but I forget. And so again, we're trying to try out these new features. Previously, if I wanted to do something like this, instead of using facet wrap, I would have to use facet grid. And so it just wasn't as flexible. And so it's nice to be able to have the scale and the size argument in facet wrap now. And of course, I screwed that up, and it's probably not size. Oh, what is it called? Let's see. Again, I'm still learning the new syntax along with everybody else. And space. Okay. So let's, instead of size, use space. So that's the feature. That's the argument that I'm glad we have now. And so now what we see is that the actual column is the same width as each of the columns in the media, okay? Cool, huh? Great. So that's adding faceting. And of course, down the road, we're gonna wanna get rid of these titles and everything, and we're gonna wanna remove some of the padding and all sorts of other stuff. But let's look at this plot. And what's another geom we wanna add? Well, we already talked about wanting to add the text, right? And so they're doing some cool things with the text, I think. So they show all of the text in the actual causes of death, right? And so this becomes kind of their legend, right? That when we see this blue, we know that's heart disease, right? Or under accidents, they've got stroke as this orangish color, but they've got just very thin rectangle in the media, right? And so because they're using this as a legend and they're keeping things in the same order and the same color, fill color across all of the bars, I don't need that extra legend off on the right side. But there are 15, there's 15 types of death or causes of death, and that is going to take a little bit of work to figure that out. So anyway, let's think about the text first. And so one of the things I was getting at with the text is that because they name everything over here on the left side, they don't have to name it on the right side when the value gets to be too small. So it seems like the smallest percentage that they show over here is this 2.3% for heart disease under Fox News, right? So, but also things under 1% for like homicide and terrorism under the actual, they kick out to the side. So let's go ahead and rough in the names, okay? And so one thing that I notice in looking at our data, again, if I run just the data part here, is that the cause isn't a, quote, pretty name, right? Like, so it's got like accidents, but it's all lowercase, and Alzheimer's is all lowercase, and it's not Alzheimer apostrophe S disease, right? So we're gonna need to put in some pretty names for that. And so what we could do is back up here before we do the pivot longer. Let's see, so I'm thinking that we could always, so one thought might be, well, why don't we set the label in scale fill manual, but that's not what we want. That would set the label in a legend, and we're not using a legend. So I've been saying legend, I'm thinking legend. So instead what I want to do is I want to create a pretty cause column, right? And then we'll use that pretty cause column to paste with the actual, the Fox, the New York Times, the WAPO, the share, right? So, but first we want to go ahead and put in the cause. So let's go ahead and do mutate. We'll do pretty cause. And so the challenge here then is getting them in the right order, right? So we'll do accidents, and then Alzheimer's disease. And let me make sure that I've got things capitalized correctly, okay? I might put this on a separate line because we're gonna be scrolling off the right side. And then again, I'm doing it in the same order as we have in the cause column. So the next is cancer, and then it's COVID-19, I believe, right? COVID-19, yep. And then after that is diabetes. That's right, yep. And then drug overdose is okay. And then, what do you have next? So after drug overdose, heart disease, and I believe this, yep, okay, that's right, capitalization. Sorry, I know this is tedious to watch. It is tedious for me to write. All right, and then we have homicide, which is capital H. All right, and I put that comma in the wrong place. And then after homicide, we have influenza. I think this is one that was different, right? So influenza is being shown as lower respiratory diseases. That's mentioned down here in the caption, okay? And so we'll then put lower respiratory diseases. Yeah, and then, I think that's right. Yeah, and what's after that? Kidney disease. I believe it was. Let's double check. Kidney failure. Okay. And then after kidney failure was liver, and I think that must be liver disease. And I need quotes around that, of course. All right, and then respiratory. Nope, that wasn't respiratory. Sorry. It was influenza pneumonia for lower respiratory disease. Okay, so we'll put that there, and then I'll cut and paste lower respiratory disease down after liver disease, because that was respiratory. Okay, and then we have stroke, which I believe right is just capital, simple. And then we have suicide and terrorism. Okay, and I think those are terrorism, suicide. Okay, great. So let's see. Wonderful. That gradient is beautiful. I think you're liking the colors. Thank you. And joining from the Midwest is the best. And so Sid asks, doesn't it take more memory to load the CSV file again and again and again instead of locally loading the env once and then manipulating? Probably not for files as small as this, but larger ones. I think you're asking if this takes more memory. So I don't think so. So in this case, we're downloading it to our computer. And then if I'm like reloading this, it's writing over the same memory over and over again. And actually, if we look at environment, you can see like how much memory we're using. So 500 megabytes, which is peanuts by today's standards. So that doesn't concern me so much. The place where you will notice a difference is in time. So like you said, if it's a big file, it's going to take a long time to read it, right? Whereas this, it's so small that I'm being kind of careless in how I do it. Normally what I do, if I've got a big file, and I might still do that here, would be to break my pipeline up, right? So I might take all this stuff and assign this to a variable. So I'm then creating the data. And then all the little tweaking I do to improve the appearance, I won't have to read things in. I'm just feeding that back into my ggplot pipeline. But for now, I try to go as far as I can without creating any variables. So let's see. Could you also make a lookup table and use rename? So rename works on the columns, the column names. And so recode could work, right? Recode would be perhaps a safer way to do it, right? Where if I had like lowercase a accidents equals uppercase a accidents, then that would actually work on after pivot longer. So there's all sorts of ways to do things. So then we're going to pipe this pretty cause in, and at this point we're going to get an error if we run this because, oh, maybe we didn't get an error. Yeah, we got an error because it can't combine actual, which is a double, with pretty cause, which is a character. And so what that means is that I need to pivot longer on what? On pretty cause and cause. And again, this syntax with the minus means pivot all the columns except for cause and pretty cause. I could also put in NYT, WAPO, and Fox as the names of things to pivot longer on, right? And so now when I look at this, if I run that again, I now see that I get cause, pretty cause, source, share, and type. Okay, great. Now, again, we're still thinking about adding in the label. And maybe before we get too far ahead of ourselves, let's go ahead and add that geom. So we'll do geom text. And we need to add the label aesthetic. So we'll do label equals pretty cause. And there we go. This is not pretty, right? And so what it is doing is it's placing the label at the share value, right? So it's getting the X position, it's getting the Y position, and then it's putting in the label, right? So it'd be kind of like a scatter plot of text. But I want heart disease to be up here, right? And I want cancer wherever cancer was, right? And so to do that, we need to add a geom to geom text, or it's not a geom, we need to add a position. So we'll do position equals position, and then it is stack, right? So geom call by default uses position stack, and so we can use position stack with geom text to then get our text to stack, right? So we have accidents at the top, Alzheimer's disease, cancer. And so what you'll notice, a couple things. So first of all, it's putting these in alphabetical order, which is different from the order here. We'll get there, right? And it's also then, it's stacking the values, right? So it's basically adding up all the values, and because accidents goes at the top, when it's added up all the shares, we get to 100%, okay? And so the default vertical alignment of position stack is 1. So if I do vjust equals 0, then we'll see it puts it at the bottom of the rectangle. And if we do 0.5, it'll put it in the middle, right? And so now we have those labels in the middle of each of the rectangles, okay? All right, and yep, okay. So now, and so the key of live streaming your thought process is don't think about live streaming and talk, right? So anyway, I really enjoy this though. All right, so that's part of the pretty label, right? So the other part of the pretty label is going to be the percentage in parentheses. And so to do this, let's go ahead and try to use glue. I haven't used glue in a while. And so glue is a substitute for paste or paste 0, which are functions from base R. And so glue comes with the tidyverse. And so I'm going to add another mutate statements. So I'll do pretty label. And before I forget, instead of pretty cause, I'm going to put in pretty label. And maybe so I don't have too many pretty things, I'll make this full cause. And then I'll just clean up my text here a little bit. All right. So then pretty label will be glue, and then in quotes, the syntax is that we use curly braces in quotes with, say, like full cause, okay? And so I need a comma up here. And so at this point, we're doing nothing special. So if I run this, oh, why don't you work? Full cause, oh, because I didn't change it here, right? So we need that here. And so now it should give me the same output we had before, right? Nothing's changed. All right. So now to get the pretty label, what we want to do is to then put in parentheses, in curly braces again, the share, right? So now what's going to happen is it's going to make a string that has the full cause, so like accidents with a capital A, and then a space, and then a parentheses, the share of accidents from that source, right? And so now when we run this, what we get is a big jumbled mess. Awesome, right? So yeah, it's a big jumbled mess. And so there's a few things still going on here that we want to take on. We should shrink the font. We'll do that eventually. But one thing I'm noticing right off the bat is that we have a lot of significant digits here, right? So like homicide for New York Times, I have as 41.949. And I believe New York Times homicide is 42, right? So they're using 2 significant digits. So let's go ahead and do that. So let's go ahead and around share, we could do signif on share and 2. And so if I have like pi, I do signif pi 2 for 2 digits, this should give me 3.1. 3.1, right? All right. And if we did like signif, well, let's do the same thing. And I do like 100 times pi, we get 310. Because that 0 is not a significant digit, right? Yeah, if I remember back to high school, it's rounding things, right? And if you're interested in rounding, I do have a previous video where I talked about R's many ways of doing rounding. And sometimes you'll have a number that ends in 0.5 and it doesn't round up. It rounds down. Why? And so I'll send you over to that video to check that out. All right, so let's go ahead and run this now. And what do we see? What we see is that we've got 2 significant digits, right? We have homicide 52, we have COVID-19 2.2. And one thing I see weird is that we have stroke at 7. That should probably be 7.0. But I noticed that they don't use 7.0, so I'm not going to worry about that so much. And we'll go with that. All right, so let's go ahead and make the font white, okay? So again, we can do that in geom text. And because we're going to use the same color for all of the text, we could do that outside of an aesthetic statement. So we'll do color equals white. And now what we see is that we've got our white text, right? Cool. All right. One other thing that we could do pretty quickly here is let's go ahead and filter the data to not show the text if it's less than 2.3% in the media or less than 1% in the actual, okay? And so we could do that up here in pretty label, right? Yeah, we could do that here. So we could do, I don't know, we've got this, and I don't, yeah, so, okay, I'm just thinking how to do it. Okay, so we'll do if else. So we'll do if else type equals media and share less than, I think it was 2.4 because I think 2.3 was the smallest. So less than 2.4. So we'll do that, or type equals actual and share less than 1. So if that's true, then we want to put in nothing. We want it to be empty, right? And let's see. I'm getting something weird here, so I must be missing a parenthesis. Okay, yeah, I'm missing a parenthesis here to end out the if-else statement. All right, and we can put that there. And so now what we find is that not all of the rectangles have a label over them, right? So like these labels, these rectangles here don't show up. And I don't see homicide or terrorism on the left side. Okay, so I think we got it right. Once we reorder things, we'll see it. So let's go ahead and reorder things, okay? So what we'd like to do is order things by the actual percent, okay? And so I guess we should double check that. And one thing I notice in here is that the suicide is 2.1, and that falls after liver disease and before COVID-19. I don't know. I'm going to do it the right way, so to speak. So I'm probably going to end up with suicide after COVID-19 because it is a lower percentage, but that'll be fine. So again, I'm going to come back up to the original data frame up here, right, where I had the wide format, where I had my causes, and then actual, Fox, New York Times, and WAPO. And I'm going to change cause to be a factor that is ordered by actual, okay? And so, as always, there's a variety of ways we could do this. I'm going to use a tool from, I think it's called 4cats. It's a special package for working with factors. So we'll take cause and do FCT reorder. So we're going to reorder cause, and we're going to do it by, or I guess we don't need a by, but we need an X. We need a vector, a numeric vector, by actual. And so now what this will do is this will make cause a factor, and it's going to order it by the actual value. And I think it's going to go from smallest to largest. And so we'll have to, we might have to flip that, but let's see what the plot looks like, and then we can flip it. And wait for it. Yeah, we flipped it. So we have heart disease on the bottom and these other things up at the top. We have terrorism and homicide up at the top and heart disease at the bottom, right? So we can flip that easily enough by coming back up here, and I'll put a minus before the actual, and that should flip the order for us, right? And so now we have heart disease and cancer at the top and homicide and terrorism at the bottom, okay? And then, of course, we can't see the two very small rectangles at the very bottom here, and we'll get that label in there soon enough. All right, so we have our bar plot, our stacked bar plots. We have it faceted. Hopefully you can see that we're getting this gap between the two facets. We have our text labels on here that we placed using position stack with geom text, and then we combined the name, excuse me, the pretty name with the percentage using the glue package, the glue function. Excuse me. All right. Now what? Let's go ahead and we'd made the text white. Let's go ahead and make the text smaller. And so we can do that in geom text. So let's do size equals, and let's for now do 6. We'll do size.unit equals pt. And that shrinks it down so it's easier to read. I'm noticing that I don't have the Fox label here. And I think that might be because, well, what was the Fox over here? It's 2.3%. And so I did that filter up here with like type equals media share less than 2.4. What happens if I go up to like 2.5? Do I get the Fox then? Let's see. No. Oh, I'm thinking of it the opposite way. If it's Okay, so I was doing less than 2.4, but I want this to be less than 2.2. And so then 2.3 will be greater than 2.2, and we'll then get the label. There we go. All right. So one thing I'm noticing in theirs is that like heart disease is a smaller font than cancer, right? And then also over here, these fonts are all about the same size, but then when we get to kidney failure, those shrink, right? So pretty much, I want to say anything less than 3% has a smaller font size. So I think this is a new feature from ggplot2 version 4, which is that I can use the size of the font as an aesthetic, okay? And let's go ahead then, and kind of like we have a pretty label here, let's go ahead and do size label, and I'll do if else share less than, and I forget what I actually just said. I think it was 3%. Share less than 3, then we're going to use something, and otherwise we're going to use 6, which is here, right? So do size equals 6, and here let's do 4. And so this will create a size label. That's that. And I'll remove this size equals 6 here, because the size equals 6 is going to apply the 6-point font to all the text. Whereas if I have it in the aesthetic, then I can, Then it will map the data to it, right? So here I'll go ahead and do AES, and I'll do size equals size label, or maybe because I do pretty label, let's do label underscore size. All right, and I could put this up here. Why don't I put it up with the ggplot2? Okay, so we'll do that. And so we're going to get a result, but it's not the result we're going to want. So I'll talk you through that here. And so what we get then is a legend for our font size, where we have weirdness. So I'm noticing over here, yeah, so we've got a legend for 5 and 6. So it's using 5, 5.5, and 6 as it's using them, and it's probably got like a 4.5 and a 4 up further. It's using those as the labels, okay? And so what I want to add to this then is a scale. So if we do scale, size, identity, then that is going to use the value in the column as the actual size. So this will work well with scale, size, identity. It'll also work well with like colors. So if I have a column of colors that I want to use, like hexadecimals or the names of the colors, I can do like scale color identity, scale fill identity to then get that to work. So there we go. That brought back our names over here, and then we got rid of the legend that we had, and we then see that like heart disease up here is smaller, and these values down here below diabetes get smaller as well, right? And once we start moving things around, we'll probably want to play with the sizes, because like here, like drug overdose is too wide, whereas here it's more narrow, right? So we'll fiddle with the sizes later. One thing I noticed with like lower respiratory diseases is that the 6.3 is on a separate line, whereas here it's all on the same line. So to fix that, I think what I'll do is back up here in lower respiratory diseases is I'll automatically go ahead and put a line break in to the full cause name, okay? And so now what we see is lower respiratory diseases goes over 2 lines, okay? Let's see. Did you all check the Gen Z lingo of dplyr? Yeah, so there's a, is it like Gen Z plier? That Hadley Wickham made a package where he replaces dplyr function names with Gen Z names. The one I remember is yeet. I am a Gen Xer, proudly Gen Xer, so my kids walk around just saying yeet all the time, which I don't know what it means. And it was, I guess that means filter. I don't know. And how there's a pipe character. Someone suggested that it should be %vape% instead of like a typical pipe. And then what was another one I remember? Someone suggested a 6.7. My son, actually, I have an 18-year-old son who has a pickup truck, and on the license plate, it has something 6.7. And I, for the longest time, didn't know what it meant, but I was too afraid to ask him what it meant. I thought he's quite tall, but he's not 6'7". So I was like, I don't know what that is. Maybe it's something that if I ask will show my age. So anyway, yeah, that's pretty cool. But it's fun to see the fun that people have with making art packages. Awesome. Yeah, it's a bit of comic relief when we're banging our heads against programming, right? Cool. All right, so I think the next thing I will do is go ahead and get these into the right order. Or actually, no, we have it in the right order. Right, we did that. Okay. No, the color is what I want to do. The fill color is what I want to change next. Okay. So let me take a drink. And let's think about how to do this. And so we could do scale fill manual. Let's do that. I think that would be easier. So we'll go ahead and add another scale fill manual. And we're going to remove the legend. So it doesn't really matter what these labels are or what the title is. So let's go ahead then and put in the breaks and then the values. So the values will be the colors and the breaks will be the names that are in this cause column, right? So if I'm not going to type them out, lest you worry, but if I run this, I get the cause, right, in that first column. So let me rerun this and come back. I'm trying to get a listing of all the different causes. And part of me is a little bit worried that it needs to be in the right order. Let's see. Let's get it in the right order, I think. All right, where am I? Okay. So I want to get the listing in the correct order. And so, right, I made that after creating a factor. And so we have this. So I think here I could then do distinct cause. And that then is going to give me the causes, not in the right order. But let me go ahead and do distinct cause and then do arrange. And then that still isn't the right order. What? Why aren't you in the right order? Did I do the mutate? No. Where? Okay, let's see. So I'm trying to get things in the order, and that's right here, right? Let's do count cause. And that is the right order. Okay. So then let's do a pull on cause. And that then gets me my causes in the right order. I think I could also probably have also done like levels on cause. And I didn't like that. All right. So let's roll with this, and we'll take these names, and I will be sure to get rid of this code. That was all to keep me from having to retype everything, which would be certain to introduce all sorts of typos. So I'm going to then wrap these in quotes. The joy of copying and pasting. I'm I'm not doing a very good job. All right. If one of the cool things is if I highlight something and then hit the quote mark, it'll automatically put both quote marks on. I have to highlight it though before I do it. All right, there you go. And so we'll clean this up. One thing I notice about their category names here, causes of death, is that some of them have spaces. And for a categorical variable like this, I generally prefer not to have spaces. I do not like spaces because, you know, if those things wound up as column headings, then they would be variable names with spaces in them. And so, yeah, if you want a space, I would say go ahead and put an underscore in. And that makes things nice. And so, yeah, spaces are painful, especially like in file names. And speaking of which, I saw something earlier on Blue Sky today where you can, I think on a Mac, you can now put emoji into file names, which, let me be the first to tell you, don't do that. Don't put spaces in file names. Don't put emojis in file names, because it's just gonna make life hard. And all right, just cleaning this up a smidge so things don't roll off the side of the screen. All right, and so now we have our breaks, and now we need our values, which will be the fill colors for these different things. And so this is where things might get fairly tedious, but we will try to do it quickly. And so we will do our digital color meter, which I have over here. And I'm going to take heart disease as the first one, right? And this is part of that tedium, right? And then we want cancer, which is the second one. And then accidents, which is this greenish one. And stroke. That. All right. Lower respiratory diseases is this. And I'm going to keep them the same number of things per line as I have up in the breaks, so it's easier to keep things straight. And then we have Alzheimer's, which is like this purplish color. There. Maybe it's plum, I don't know. And then diabetes, this pinkish color. All right, and then kidney disease, kidney failure, it's like a blue color. Get that in there, halfway there. And then liver, which is this tealish color. All right, and then mine are flipped, right? So COVID-19 would be next, right? And then suicide would be next. All right, we're getting there. Thanks for hanging on. Influenza is down here. And right. And hopefully you wouldn't be using so many colors. The colors, the number of colors, 15 colors, is part of the problem with a stacked bar plot, especially when you have so many categories like this, or like I said, in my field of microbiome research. So that was drug overdose. I think I skipped one. Drug overdose, homicide, term. Okay, nope, that's right. And so I'll grab this here for homicide, and then terrorism. And this dark green. All right, I think we did it. Thanks for your patience. Now when we run this, no errors. Hey, we got it to work. Okay, so we have their colors in our plot, right? Cool. And so again, the difference between theirs and ours is the order of suicide and COVID-19. Mine is right, theirs is wrong. I'm noticing that their COVID-19, or mine has that 6%, whereas theirs for Fox News has a 6.0%. I'm not going to worry about that just because in one place they didn't have the period over here for stroke, and here they do. So I'm not going to worry about that for now. One thing I am going to fix though is, I'm noticing that the columns are out of order, right? They're also alphabetical, F and W, right? Where we want New York Times, Washington Post, and Fox. That's kind of the political spectrum where the New York Times would be seen as being on the left, Fox on the right, and Washington Post maybe in the middle. But before we do that, let's go ahead and get rid of the legend because we don't need that. And we can do that up in geom_call. We can do show.legend equals false. Again, I'm playing the bit of not getting into theme until I absolutely have to. You can do this in theme, of course, but we don't have to. So why, right? So that freed up a lot of space, and we can hopefully see that things are starting to look more and more alike. All right, so let's worry about the order then of the sources. And so like we did the order of the causes, we're going to use a factor to set the order of the sources. And so we'll come back up here and let's see, we want to do it after the pivot longer, yeah? And so let's come after label size maybe and do, we're going to mutate the source, we needed source equals factor on source. And then our levels, I'm going to do actual. That doesn't really matter. We just need to label it or name it as being one of the levels. It doesn't matter if we put it first or last or in the middle, but it makes sense to put it first, I think. And then we'll do NYT, and then we'll do WAPO, and then we'll do Fox. And so now what we see is that we have New York Times on the left, Washington Post in the middle, and Fox on the right, which is what they have. Cool. Let's see. One other thing we can do is that in my way of thinking, this media coverage of these causes of death in 2023, this is like the facet label, the strip up at the top, like this, right? And then the New York Times, Washington Post, Fox News are the x-axis text, right? That's the same thing that we have down here. So let's go ahead and move this x-axis text up to the top, okay? And so we can do that in scale x discrete, and then we can do position equals top. And so by default, it's at the bottom, and now we're putting it up at the top. And so now you see we have New York Times, WAPO, Fox. You'll see that the facet strip text, the facet title, is underneath the x-axis text. And so that is something that we'll have to use the theme function to solve. But we're not ready for that. Let's go ahead and get these titles to look like theirs, right? And so we've already opened up ScaleX discrete. So let's go ahead and here then and do breaks equals, and we'll do NYT, WAPO, Fox. And we can do labels, the New York Times. Does it have a the? Yep. And then the Washington Post, and then Fox News. And again, what that did was that changed the text that from NYT to the New York Times, WAPO to the Washington Post, Fox to Fox News, right? And so then the other one, well, I left it out actually, was the actual. So let's go ahead and put in the actual. And I think what I will do is make causes of death the x-axis text, okay? And so now we have that as our x-axis text. All right. And so again, what we're going to do is once I start using theme, I'm really committed to this bit. These strips are going to go to the top and the text is going to go underneath it. And this actual, we're going to make it blank. And then the media, we're going to make media coverage of these causes of death in 2023 in, right? So let's go ahead and do that now, actually. And I think we'll come back up to where we defined type, right? So we did that. Oh, nope, that wasn't here. That was, if the source is actual, then it's actual, otherwise it's media. So let's do that here. So if it's actual, then I'm gonna blank that out. And let me see if I'm using actual anywhere else. Yeah, so we wanna make this blank. So it's an empty string, right? And then media, not that. Let's go ahead and copy and paste it from here. Paste that in as that facet's title. And did that work? That worked, right? So again, with some imagination, we're going to flip the position of the strip title to be above this x-axis text. We'll also have to do some formatting here with causes of death to make it over 2 lines and to make causes of death bold with the rest of the text not bold, okay? Cool. All right, let's go ahead and put in the titles. And so, again, planning ahead here a little bit. Why not in the US 2023 as the X label and cause of death as the facet title? Yeah, good question. Good question. You could totally do that, right? I'm being a little fastidious, right? I'm noticing that the gap between these titles and the facet title is wider than the gap here. Okay, and so if causes of death was at the same position as the media going across, then I would do that. But because it's not, I'm doing it this way. Does that make sense? Hope so. All right. Good question. Good eye. All right. So let's go ahead and put in the titles. And so, like I said, this title, like the first line is left justified and the second line is right justified. And I actually like this title and their use of color and their arrows to kind of draw you to what Americans, quote, actually die from, and the cause of death that the US media reports on is the right. Yeah, I like that. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to make this the title and this the subtitle. And then this down here will be the caption. And so I'm going to go ahead and do that. So we'll come over here and let me get these labels to not go across the screen. We'll do labs, title equals that, subtitle equals this, and then caption is going to be this. Okay. And as we've seen in the past, we have embedded double quotes. So I think the easiest thing, we could use single quotes on the outside, but if there's a single quote on the inside, then that's just gonna be a mess. So if we use this backslash, we can escape out. Okay, and then I think there's double quote here, and here, and here, and here. Okay, and so all the nasty squigglies go away. And so there we've got our caption at the bottom, okay? And I think it was Mike texted me, or emailed me, sorry, to talk about, he suggested that a problem we have in past videos is getting the space between the paragraphs in a caption right. Yeah, so there's like this gap here. So he suggested using the tag element of a labs function for the data sources. So I'm not going to do that today, but instead I'm going to put this text down here, the CCBY, as a tag. And so we'll go ahead and do that. And we'll do CCBY. And now this is going to put it in a weird place. As you'll see, it's up in the upper left. We're going to use the theme function later to put it in the bottom right, I think. I haven't done this, so I want to see if that works. All right. So some other things that we can do without theme. Let's get rid of the source and the share. And we can do that also in labs. And so we'll do x equals null. And so that should get rid of the source, right? And then we can do y equals null, and that should get rid of the share on the left side, right? So now we've removed that. Something else that we can do without going into theme is we can remove the expansion, the padding that's around the plots, okay? And that's called expand. And we can do that with Cartesian. And we'll do expand equals false. And we can do clip equals off. So clip will be useful for putting things outside of the plotting window, which we'll want to do for like this logo and for these arrows. And also this annotation down here in the bottom left, okay? So go ahead and add that. And so now you can see we've gotten rid of the padding around the plots, right? Yeah, we can separate the panels as well later if we need to. Let's go ahead and put in the text for homicide and terrorism, okay? So I'm going to do that with annotate. And we'll do x equals, and so I think the center of this is 1, and I think this then is like 0.5 maybe. So we'll do 0.5, and we'll do y equals, we'll need 2, so let's do 0 and 5, and we'll do label, and then in here we're going to put homicide and terrorism. All right. And I'm also going to leave in the % there, right? And then we can do color equals, and so then the homicide color is this color and this color. Okay. And maybe I put those in the opposite order of what I wanted. So I think this should be 5, 0. Okay. And so what this should do is it should put text. It's going to center it at 0.5 and then 5 and 0.5 and 0. And I'll go ahead and do hjust equals 1 to actually make it right justified rather than center justified. And it's upset. Okay, so we need to do geom equals text. And this isn't going to get us exactly what we want, but it'll be pretty close. All right, it's still upset. Aesthetics must be either length 1 or the same as the data 4. And so that is because I've got facets, right? And so another feature from ggplot2 version 4 is that we can do layout within annotate to annotate specific panels of a facet. So the first, this is panel 1, right? And so now what we see is we've got the text over here on the left side, okay? Let's see. Hadn't you moved the text for the small bars? Yes, and I'm adding it because the text had been centered, and you'll notice that they then put it over on the left side. So I removed it from here, and am now put it over on the left side. I think that's what you're asking. Welcome, Roberto, from sunny London. It is a very dreary Dexter, Michigan. Cool. And I am actually originally, you're from Ecuador, you say? And I'm originally from Missouri. That's where I grew up for junior high and high school. So when I say I like the Midwest, I like the Midwest. All right. Great. So we can make that text smaller. And that text seems to be the same size as the small text we have, right? And so that small text that we used was 4, okay? And so let's go ahead and we'll do size equals 4, size.unit equals pt. And I learned recently that the default size is millimeters. And so I don't think of text in terms of millimeters, but I do in points. So, all right, so that shrunk that down. And so our homicide is probably too far up. So instead of being 5, let's maybe make that 3. And that brings it down, okay? And one thing I'm noticing is that it's adding space to the left side of this first panel. And that's because, versus being much closer to it, and that's because my X position is 0.5. So if I made it like 0.6, it should bring it closer and not add that space. And so that's probably too far. So let's do 5.5. And we'll leave that there for now. Okay. So I think that's what we want so far. I guess we could rough in the arrows. So let's go ahead and do what? Annotate geom equals curve. And then we'll do X. Again, if this was like 0.5, maybe let's do 0.5. And then Y, let's see, if this is 100, is that 125? And then Y end, let's see, where do they draw the arrow to? Right above, so maybe like 105. And then we'll do arrow equals arrow. That'll be a start. Yeah, let's see what that does. All right, it's upset. Oh, because I didn't put curve in quotes. All right, still upset with me. Oh, because of the layout thing again. So we'll do layout equals 1 to get it to be the first thing. And it's still unhappy with me. Error occurred in the 4th layer. I don't know what that means. Let's see. Arrow. Is it the arrow that's the problem? Maybe it wants an X end also. There we go. It wanted an X end. And so now we can see that, yeah, okay. We can see it did what we asked it to do, which was to draw the arrow. But it's adding room to the top of the plot. And that's because I need to set the Y limit on my plot, right? And so if we come back up to chord Cartesian, I should be able to do Y lim equals C 0 to 100, okay? So that's going to confine the panel on the vertical, the Y-axis, to be between 0 and 100. And then it'll throw everything outside of the plotting window besides that. There we go, right? And so now we have our arrow kind of going to where we want it, which will be hopefully where this comes down to once I start doing that. So what we could do is maybe bring the start back a little bit to 4.5 to be up there, and maybe we could go up a little bit higher. I shouldn't mess with this too much. Maybe we'll make this 130, something like that, right? And so then we want to add on the arrow, and so we'll do arrow equals arrow, and there we go. We've got our arrow. For some reason, it's falling behind the strip. I'm not going to worry about that right now. It's also really big. We can change that to be type equals closed. Right. And so we'll mess with the formatting here in a bit. Now let's think about, well, we want that arrow to be this purple color, right? And so let's get our color meter again. And we'll do color equals that. Oh. I like double quotes. I don't know why. And there we go. We've got our purple arrow. Okay. And we'll mess with things once we start playing with the formatting. Now let's do the right-hand arrow. And yeah, okay. So I'm going to, you know, we could probably use the same annotate statement. Yeah, and I think we saw before that we could vectorize layout, okay? So if x is 0.45, so if this is 1, 2, 3, let's do 3.45. A comma there. And I'm going to go ahead and use the same values. I need a comma there. And yeah. So no errors, except that it did a lot of funkiness. So I think this is the arrow I put on the right, and this is the left one. So I don't think it's respecting my layout. All right, let's make 2 annotate statements. I'm going to undo everything here. All right, bear with me. And I'll copy this down. And then we will do this as layout 2. And again, this was 3.45, 3.5, layout 2. And so now what we get is our left arrow, our right arrow, but we need to flip the direction of that arrow. And so that could be done with curvature. Yeah. I think it's negative 0.5. Nope. Is it curvature? Hey, that worked, no errors. And we can then see we have our arrow going in the clockwise direction, but we want that to hit maybe down like at 97. And we don't want it at the same level, so maybe we'll bring it down, say like 120. Okay, and then we want this reddish color. And we'll replace that. All right. All right. So there we go. I'll hold off on the logo for now. Cool, right? So I see that it is adding some padding on the left side and the right side. And again, that is because I don't have limits. So we saw that before. It was adding, we thought it was adding padding to the top. And then I did the Y lim. I set the bounds between 0 and 100. Here then, what I would be tempted to do would be to set the X limits, right? And so the problem is that in ggplot2 with facets, you cannot specify the limits to be separate or different for each facet, right? So I can't say the limit here is from 0.5 to 1.5 or from 0.5 to 3.5, right? Like it doesn't do that. I can maybe make things a little bit better up here, where if I can put this on separate lines and I do xlim 0, so they all will start at 0, right? And then I can do NA. And so NA tells ggplot, I'll let you pick the maximum limit. And that's as close as we can get to having separate limits. And so I put in 0, and what I probably should have put in was 0.5. And so that pulls that back over, right? And so then that applies that padding also to the second facet. And because I can't set a different ending limit for both of these, it's adding a little bit of padding there, right? And so that's fine. We'll play with that. All right. So I think I have done everything I can without going into the theme function. Okay. One thing I might think about doing is, like, we have this lower respiratory disease 6.3 that goes over 2 lines. I could maybe that separation is quite wide compared to what they had, so I could come back up to geom text. Where are you? Up here, and I could do line height. Is that right? Line height equals 1. And you can see that tightened that up a bit. I could do a little bit more. I could do like 0.9. Oh, and I think I forgot a comma at the end. Must have taken that off. 0.9 comma. And yeah. And things are going to move around because we're going to change the font and we're going to change the theme and everything else. All right. But I am seeing, I'm seeing that we have our labels back in here. So why do we have our labels back in there? I think that is because I changed the name of the type and I didn't update that where I then filtered that out, right? So here I had type equals media, right? I no longer have a type media. And so maybe what I'll do instead will be like str detect type. So the string, I think the string goes first. So I'll do string of media in type. So if in the type column we see the string media and it's less than 2.2, then we're going to return a 0 or return an empty, right? Oh, and that's unhappy. Why are you unhappy? Let me look at the help for str detect, see if I forgot something there. All right, string pattern. So I think that's right. All right. All right. Why are you upset? Empty search patterns are not supported. Okay. So oh, I flipped it. So the string is type. The pattern is the media. All right. And somehow I got a British pound in there. I don't know. Let's try this again. There we go. Now the stuff went away that's not supposed to be there. All right. Wonderful. Now we are ready to customize. All right. Thank you, Mark. All right, so now we're going to break into the theme function. I think the first thing that I will do is bring in the fonts. And so we'll go ahead and do library show text. And we'll do font add Google. And we'll do Lotto. I think Lotto is the serif font that they use. And then we'll do show text opts DPI equals 300 to get that resolution. there's a sans serif font that we want. So if I pull that back up here, where'd you go? Over here, right? We go to the top of this article, and we'll inspect. Oh, inspect, and that's Lotto. That's the sans serif font. Okay, and then what is this? If we inspect this, that is Playfair display. Okay, right. I knew that. So we'll do Playfair display. Bring that in as the Playfair font, and then we'll do show text auto to get everything loaded. All right, and then the moment I've been waiting for, theme. We'll do element. My fingers, I'm so excited. Element text. We'll do family. Slow down, Pat. Lotto. And that got us our Lotto font. And I guess I lied because I could have brought that font into these. So hopefully you forgive me to bring the font into the geom text. So let's do that right quick. Again, geom text. We'll do family equals Lotto. Oh, and it's upset. Uh-oh. Why are you upset? Make sure I've got everything loaded. Huh. Oh, maybe I forgot to do show text, library show text. Not sure what the problem was. Sometimes you get going so fast you miss the error messages. There we go. I could see the font pull in. And so you can see like the 2 on that 29 goes straight down. Whereas this 2 doesn't seem to have it. Wonder why it doesn't have that. That's weird. Because I need to do text equals element text. I'm sure somebody was telling me that over in the chat. All right. And so now when we look, yeah, that 2 goes straight down. It doesn't have that hump. Okay, good. All right. Now let's do the title. And so then that's going to be the serif font as well as the subtitle. We'll do title equals element text. We'll do family equals Playfair. We'll also do subtitle element text family equals Playfair. And while I'm here, I'm going to go ahead and do hjust equals 1 to get the subtitle to be right justified. Oh, right, because it's plot dot title. I'm sure you all knew that. The problem with live streaming is you all see my errors, and I think that's good. I think it's good for you all to see that someone who programs in R a lot like me, even I, not that I'm anything special, even I make mistakes, right? And so I think it's good to help normalize that. We want these fonts to be the same size. And so let's go ahead and I'll make this title 15. We'll make this one 17. I do want them to be the same size, but what I'm trying to do is match the size of the font. And I think it is 15. Okay. So let's go ahead and do that. So we'll do 15 and 15, and then we'll also change the color. So the color on the right is that purple. And then the color on, sorry, that was color on the left was that purple, whereas this other color is the red. Too many quotes. And there we go, right? I think it should probably be bolded though. Yeah, so let's go ahead and do, I'm gonna put these on separate lines. We'll do face equals bold, and then subtitle, we'll also do face equals bold, and bring this down a line. And so that seems too bold, okay? So we want something in the middle. And in this font at Google, again, that was our Playfair display. You can set the regular weight and the bold weight. The regular weight, it says, is typically 400, and the bold weight is 700. So I wonder if I want to make the bold weight 600. And let's see if that does the trick. And I think that looks pretty good. I feel like our red font is, and our purple font, maybe the fonts of the arrows and the text are a little bit different. Let me grab that purple and plop that in. And then this red, here. And yeah, I think that looks a bit more like what they have. It's not perfect, but it's pretty close, I'd say. And I'd say that's like bang on. I always try to like look at the length of the string when I'm like bolding things and changing the sizes to know that I've got a match. I think it looks pretty good. Good. Let's go ahead and what next? Let's go ahead and play with these facets, okay? And we can flip the position. So that will also be in theme. And so we'll do strip dot placement, and we can say outside. So I'm noticing that the code is taking just a beat longer to run than normal. And I think that's because, I don't know, that's just because, because I've got more stuff going on, right? And so now what we see with that strip placement outside, we now have that strip outside, right? I'm going to go ahead and remove the margin around the strip text. I also want it to be bold. So let's go ahead and do strip.text equals element text, and we'll do face equals bold, and well, we want the color to be the same red, right? So we want this color, that, and then let's bring this over. We'll do margin equals margin, and I'll do t equals 0, b equals 0. Yeah, it's taking just a beat to do. And so that made that bold, and it we can see that the background narrowed down, right? We're going to get rid of that though. So then we could do, let's see, strip dot background equals element blank to get rid of the background. And I'm missing something. Oh, I put a plus instead of a comma. Silly me. And we got rid of that background. Cool. Now let's think about our text here. So I am going to use ggtext so that I can use the element markdown function, which will allow me to make causes of death bold, and in the US in 2023, a regular font. Okay, and We'll also, though, want different colors, right? So we have a color for the causes of death in 2023, and then the 3 websites are that red color. And so we can do that using ggtext. So let's go ahead and do library ggtext. And then let's see, the causes of death, yeah, we'll put in a break here. And then I'm going to do, if I do bolding, right, that'll make it bold. So let's run this and see what it looks like. It doesn't quite do what we want, though, because we need to do axis.text.x equals element markdown. So that axis text x will control the x text elements and assign it markdown. I'm a bit worried this won't work, though, because sometimes the text at the bottom is controlled differently from what's at the top. And yeah, it didn't do it. Okay. Or maybe I didn't save it even. All right. Now let's try. Yeah, so it didn't do it. So easy enough to then do .top to say I want to change the top element. There we go. Now we have causes of death in the US in 2023. The font is a little bit big, but let's go ahead and change the color of those fonts. And again, we're going to do that with HTML. So I can do span, and I'll do style equals, and now in single quotes, I'll do color colon something. And then I want to do, that's going to go across everything, right? Everything in the label. And I'll back out of the span. And so I need to grab that purple text color, which is here, and plop that in there. Let's see if this works. And then we can repeat it for the media sites. Very good. We've got purple causes of death in the US in 2023. Now we want to do the same type of thing for the news sites. And I'm going to go ahead and grab the color while I'm down here. And yeah, let's go ahead and put these on separate lines to minimize the scroll. Span style equals color colon that. Oh, I don't want, I was using, yeah, get rid of those quotes. I need a single quote there. And then back out the span. Okay. So I can do the same thing for these other labels. And for Fox News. And then we can close the 3 bits. All right. That should work. Famous last words. All right. So now we have the New York Times, the Washington Post, Fox News. All good, right? Let's go ahead and get rid of those tick marks. And while we're removing stuff, I'll also remove the y-axis text. So let's go ahead and do axis.ticks equals element blank, and axis.text.y equals element blank. Oh, and I forgot a comma up here, of course. And there we go. We've gotten rid of those ticks, and that looks good. So I think our font size is too big for the x-axis text. So we'll come in here and we'll do like size equals 8, just as a guess. And that still seems a bit big. Let's take it down to say 7. And I'm going to split the difference and call it 7.5. All right. Is that right? No, I think that's too wide. I think it was probably 7. All right. just compare the width, looking at like the Washington Post here, if that's at the right side. Yeah, that looks pretty good. Okay. And yeah, okay, I'm going to leave that there. So we can then reduce the margin then between, so I think our text is the right distance from the top of the bar, but this media coverage up here is a little bit too far from the text, right? So we could shrink that by, we did strip text, margin, top, bottom. Let's do like -5. And that should pull it down. Okay, that pulled it too far down. And what's happening, actually, it may not have pulled it too far down, but what's happening is that our strip is getting clipped, okay? And so what we can do in strip, back up here with the strip stuff, I'll do strip.clip equals off, okay? So it's the same idea of what clip equals on does in chord Cartesian. It's it clips anything outside, but if we turn it off, then we should get to see what we want, right? And so that looks pretty good. I'm happy with that. All right. Let's go ahead and turn our attention to the caption. And so the caption is right justified rather than left justified. Also, again, we're going to have a mixture of bold and regular font. And so, yeah, so we'll use element markdown for that as well. Actually, I'll use element text box simple, which will help with wrapping the text, right? So let's leave that just like that and see what happens. And there we go. We have now, it's now left justified on the plot, on the panel rather than on the plot, and it's doing the wrap for us, right? So we want it to be left justified on the plot. So let's come back up to plot.caption.position equals plot. And so this again will left justify it on the overall figure, the overall window. I'm pausing a bit as I do this because normally if I do caption, I also want to do the title to be left justified on the plot. But I kind of like having it here. It kind of works. But you know what? Maybe I'll go ahead and let's just leave it for now. We might end up doing plot title position equals plot as well. And let's see, it didn't do it. Plot caption position equals plot. All right. Why aren't you moving over? Plot caption position. Let's see. If I the setting panel means the titles and caption are aligned to the plot panels. The plot means the titles. Okay. Oh, did you see that at the end? The value, and maybe you can't quite see it, and or caption are aligned to the entire plot minus any space for margins and plot tag. So let's go ahead and do plot, and then we'll turn our attention to the tag. Or maybe we'll get this formatted first and then we'll move it over. So let's go ahead and in our plot caption, we'll do color equals gray 40. And let's do size equals 7. And I can see that I can shrink that down a bit more. So I have 7, let's do 6. Oh, I didn't change what I thought I changed. Okay. I saw a 7 and I just changed it. So I want that in plot caption. That should be 6. Okay, it can come down more. Let's go plot caption. Let's go to 5. Okay, so I think that's pretty close. We need to work on the formatting, right? So the note and data sources needs to be bold. So that was up here, caption. You can put the note and then data sources. And then I think we need line breaks at the end of each of these lines. Okay, so now you see that we've got note, and because our margins are screwy, we're having problems here. One thing that I think I mentioned earlier was I think someone emailed me asking or making a suggestion of like putting in a gap. So like normally what I would do is put 2 line breaks after twice period here, and then that adds like a pretty big spacing, right? So if let's come up here, if I do like this, that makes a big space, right? And what I found through doing various experiments was an alternative. So if I actually do the paragraph anchor, and close that out, and then do another paragraph anchor and close that out, that this should give us a spacing that's more along the lines of what we might hope for, right? But I'm no longer being able to use my markdown, which is fine, because instead of those 2 stars, I can do B for bold or emphasis, and the same down here for data sources, and there. All right. And there we go. So we've got a spacing that's more like what they have. I think my font is too dark. Who cares? But I do. So that lightens it up a bit. And we'll probably want to shrink it a bit more, but we'll wait to mess with that until when we get this tag fixed. So I don't do a lot with tags. And so let's go ahead and look at the help for theme. And let's see. So it's going to be under plot.tag. And so I'll scroll down through here a bit. So there's plot tag position, plot tag location, plot, yeah. So those 3 things. So let's scroll down and see what it does for defaults and what options these arguments have. So keep going, Pat, plot, title, subtitle, tag, position, location. Okay, so plot tag, upper left label to identify a plot. It inherits from title. So if we do, let's do plot dot tag equals element text, then let's go ahead and do like color equals gray 60, and that needs to be in quotes, and I want it to be the same size as my caption. So I'll do size equals 5. See what this gives us. And so there you can see my CCBY. It's been shrunk down considerably. And it's in the upper left corner. And it's in the margin, right? And I want it in the plot, right? So let's come back to the help then. And so that was plot tag. So let's plot tag position. Position of the tag as a string, top left, top right, bottom left, bottom blah, 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 or a coordinate. So I think I probably want it like bottom right, but I see the location allows it to be either the panel, the plot, or the margin. So let's do plot.tag.location equals plot. And so now we can see that that CCBY is no longer out in the margin, it's inside the plot, but I want it to be in the bottom right. And so again, if we look at plot tag position, let's do bottom right. And there we go. Bam. And let me bring this over here. Right. And so, so maybe that is actually in the margin. Right. Yeah, maybe that is actually in the margin. So if we move this back to margin, then we can see, yeah, that's pretty good. Okay. All right. So this is going a bit long. We're getting there though. Let's go ahead and now that, let's see. We're getting there. We're close. I know it. I'm looking at the caption here, right? So I think, let's see, in this it says like all values are normalized to, and then in mine, all values are, and then it like cuts off, right? And I'm thinking about the margin and that it could be our font size is still a little too big, but the left margin isn't quite right. Let's work on the margin of the plot window because like my text here is getting cut off for homicide and terrorism. And we know we need to bring it in anyway. So let's go ahead and try to match that first before we fiddle with anything else. So we'll do plot.margin equals margin. And we'll do T, I'll do 10, R equals 30, B equals 10, L equals 30. And so we can see that brings it in. I'm going to put these like this. So I'm going to try to match like the right edge of the stacked bars, right? And so I've probably come in too far, right? And I could come in too far on the right and not enough on the left, I think. So on the left, we did 30. Let's go up to 40, and let's take our right down to 20. Okay, so I think that's gaining on it. So we could go in a little bit more on the right. And so let's take that to say 23. And then on the left, there, we could come a little bit more on the left. So let's do say 42. And I think that's going to be pretty good. That's bang on the left. And that's bang on the right. Awesome. I think the top margin could perhaps shrink a little bit. I have it at 10. Let's take that to say 8. I think that's pretty good if I put those side by side. Could probably shrink a little bit. Let's take that to say 7. Sure, that's great. And then let's see. I think our labels here could come over to the left just a smidge. That was done with an annotate, right? And that the X position was 0.55. So if I bring it to 0.54, that's pretty good. And so then like our caption, it has the margin, right? The margin is less like, what is that, like 42 or something on the left. So I want to do like negative something for the caption to pull it over to the left. And so we'll go ahead and do that with like margin equals margin. And then the left is 42. So I'm going to like, if I want like a 5-point margin or 10-point margin, I'd make it minus 32. And so you see how that pulls that over to the left. And if I put theirs under mine, I can kind of compare. And so I want to go left a little bit more. And so that was plot caption minus 32. Let's do 35. And that looks pretty good. And so then the right-hand margin on the caption is also being limited to the right edge of the plot. And so we want to pull it to the right a little bit as well. So let's go ahead and do, I think my font is still too big though. So anyway, but so the plot caption margin R, so the right-hand margin is 23. So let's maybe do like minus 10. That's theirs. This is mine. And let's see. I think I'm looking at like the overhang. So I need to shrink the font a little bit. And so that was plot caption, size 5. Let's do like 4.5. It seems really small. Okay, that was too small. Let's do 4.75. And again, I'm trying to get the same line break, right? Which is what we've got there now. And everything seems to end right at about the same spot. So that's great. And again, mine is at the top. And so we've got too much margin on the bottom. So we'll do plot caption, what? No, margin, bottom 10. Let's do 5. And so that pulls it down. Probably go down to say 3. Thank you for sticking on if you're still watching past the 2-hour mark. I know these get long. I really appreciate that. And we need a margin at the top of the caption. So if we do plot caption, and then we can do t equals 10. So I see a question from Sid. Would you be up to making a video of your dot plot idea instead of a stacked bar plot on this data? The sketch looks so cool. I will try to do that on Friday. So it will probably be like Friday at, let's do the same time. Let's do Friday at 9 my time. I will try to convert this into a dot plot. If you can stick around though, I have almost got this thing worked, I think. So just sit tight a minute if you have the patience, but I think we're getting it close here. But if you have to take off, I certainly understand. We're getting to the point where I can't tell the difference between theirs and mine, which is always a good place to be in. So that seems to line up pretty nicely. Happy with that. Mine, again, is on the right. Theirs on the left. And I think I could bring the homicide down a little bit in that annotate function. So let's make that say 2. again, that ties that down together. Let's go ahead then and there's a bit of an extra margin between the subtitle and title. And so I think that's a margin on the title. So if we do plot, let's do on the subtitle. Okay, so we'll do margin equals margin, t equals, let's try 0. It's really slowed down. So that didn't do anything for my subtitle. So let's go ahead and put that in the title. We'll do margin equals margin, b equals 0. Oh, and I'm forgetting a comma somewhere in here. Oh, where? Oh, we've got an extra parenthesis there. Okay. And so that ties those together a little bit more. Maybe I could put a little bit of margin below my title. And so plot title. And we'll do that here. So the bottom is 0. Let's maybe take it up to, say, 3. And I think that's good. I think that's good. And I guess losing sight of mine. So that CCBY probably needs to get kicked out to the right a little bit. And so maybe the CCBY, that's the tag. So we could do plot tag this. And then we could do like margin equals margin L equals, let's do 5. And I'm not sure if that's doing what I want it to do. Maybe we could do more. So it's 5. Let's do 10. And so that's moving it. And I have the location in the margin. What if I put it in the plot? And then do L equals 10. All right. On the grand scheme of things, this part isn't so critical, but let me put the right to be -10. So that moved it over. Let's keep it moving. I think I'm changing stuff I don't want to be changing. All right, I think I will, because we're kind of at time, I'll put this here. And like I said, we've got R's in there. That's fine. I've somehow changed the margin on the plot. Let's maybe make it 30 again. Yeah, I did something weird. I don't know. Okay, let's up it. So this is why we try to fiddle with things at the end, because things all start to move around. And it doesn't make sense to get too stuck on any one thing. Okay, and let's see. We can go a little bit more in on the right. Let's try 34. That's great. I think our caption is good. We need to shrink down the width of our bars. So back up in geom call. we could do width equals 0.7. And so that narrows it down probably too far. So let's make it 0.8. That's close. Let's go ahead and add spacing in between our facets. So we can do panel.spacing x equals unit. Let's do like 20 pt, 20 points. And so we can see that adds some spacing in between the strips. And we can add more, 30. All right. Go more, 40. All right. So that actually looks pretty good. Yeah, the right margin is perhaps, the right and left margins are perhaps a little bit too much. So what I do, I made geom call 0.8, right? So that means it's probably starting at like 0.1 to 1.4 if it's centered at 1, right? So it's plus or minus 0.4. And so my x limit was 0.5 to NA. So it's actually probably 0.6, right? So if I make this 0.55, then that should pull it in, right? And we can increase the panel spacing. Again, if you were making this plot from scratch for yourself, you wouldn't be doing this. I'm doing this because I'm really trying to faithfully recreate the original plot. So I did 40 and let's do 45. But I think it's good to go through the practice of faithfully trying to recreate these plots because it forces me to better understand how things work, right? Like, you know, figuring out where this caption goes, the CCBY thing goes in the bottom right corner, right? Or how to get things lined up just so, right? And yeah, so as things move around, you kind of see things too, like our text here could probably move over to the right more. And so that's this, so that was 0.54. Let's go up to 0.58. So that moves that over, and we could probably shrink it down even more. So that was 4. Go 3.5. So it's just tiny, 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 tiny. And that seems to match theirs pretty good. All right. So we could keep fiddling with the column width and position and everything. I think on the whole, I'm pretty happy with the way that looks. And let's go ahead and tidy up our arrows. So let's work on the left one first. We need to bring that down and maybe over a bit. And so that was, again, this first annotate. So let's go to, say, 125. Okay, and so let's bring it to the right a little bit, the start to the right. So let's go to like 0.5. And I got an error. All right. Why are you upset? Endpoints must not be identical. It's not identical. Okay. Maybe it doesn't want my X endpoints to be identical. So like 0.53. There we go. So that's pretty good. And then we want to bring in that to like probably like 0.6. And so that was here. Okay, so I think that's pretty good. Our arrowhead is pretty funky. In the arrow argument, arrow function, we had that here, right? We could do angle equals 20 to make it more acute. And we could make it shorter. So we'll do that back up here. I think if we get one figured out, then we'll have the other one figured out as well. So let's do length equals unit, and let's do like 10 pt. That should make the arrowhead shorter, right? Like that. I think that's pretty good. We're not gonna be able to get like the kind of the stylized arrow like they have. I think there are packages out there to get you like a stylized, more stylized arrowhead, but I'm not gonna worry about that for now. Now we wanna do the same type of thing on the right, and let's come up here. And so we had, I'm gonna clean this up. Let's put arrow on its own line, get this color stuff on its own line. All right, and so then let me go ahead and grab this, put this on a separate line. All right, there we go. So then that should get us the same style arrowheads on the right, which you can see there, right? And we want the arrowhead to come down maybe 5 units. The X, the Y start was at 120. Let's go to 115. And then I think it's ending at the right, spot. And the X start needs to go to the right a bit. So the X start was 3.45. Let's go to 3.5. And then make the end maybe 3.45. So flip those orders. Cool. So I think I can go to the right a bit more for the starting position. So let's go to 3.55. Like so. And so what I'm seeing now is that it's messing with my margins. It's moving things over, right? Which is not great. And so if we leave it at 3.5, we get something like that. And I think what's happening is that it's adding padding. So like this pad is getting wider. And again, this is the problem with not being able to set the X limits on each of these facets separately. Okay. Yeah, so that's a bit of a pain. I think I will leave it there and not stress out so much about that. And with that, then I think I'll, as Mike is saying, I'll go ahead and do panel.strip or panel.grid element blank, and then panel.background element blank to clear out the grid lines and the background. And so then that cleans that up pretty nicely. This arrow is annoying me. If I had, I don't know, if I wasn't already 20 minutes over, I would mess with that. But hey, here we are. I think the final thing I'll do is go ahead and put in that Our World and Data logo. I did this in the last episode, and so I want to practice doing it. And so I have that in my code. Let's see, that would be over here. So if I go to training modules, code club, I need to organize this better. Let's see. It's not this one. Is it this one? Nope, not that one. Yeah, and I put the financial times in the bottom left corner, right? So we need all this code. And we'll plop this into our studio. And we'll get things cleaned up here. And then the other thing that we need from that site was how to put in the custom annotation, which was annotation custom down here. All right. And really appreciate everyone's patience today. I knew this was going to be a challenging episode, a challenging plot to make. The stacked bar plots, as we saw, weren't the challenge. The challenge is a lot of the styling, right? So let's go ahead and get this library RSVG up to the top. And I think the, let's see, their logo, which if I can find it, maybe further down in their article. I know it's like up here in the plot, but it's like embedded in the plot there. There it is. I'll go ahead and copy the image address and then put the logo here. Okay, so that's the URL for the logo. We're going to read it in and then save it as the OID, Our World in Data logo. And then we've got this function getPNG that will create a function for putting a PNG into a ggplot. And so then our getPNG will be our OID logo.png. And so now that L is like a bar plot, okay? And so then what we can do down in here in annotation custom, we're going to add that bar plot, only it's a image, right? And so then our xmin, xmax are our x-axis coordinates. And so when we did this one for the Financial Times, we did it on a date axis, right? So I'm going to put this at like 3 and 4, just kind of making up stuff. And then let's put this at, say, 50. And see what it looks like. And so what I see is that it's big. And I think this that I see in the background here is actually from this panel. And then this is from this panel. And so I wonder if I can do layout equals 2. Nope, I can't. All right, so we can't do that. So a thought that occurs to me is if I pick a big enough X, then for the first facet, this thing will be basically where this second facet value is, right? And then this one will be far off the right side of the screen and I won't see it and I don't worry about it, right? So let's do that. So we will go to say 4 and 4.5. Where's the keyboard? 4.5. All right, so that went too far. 3 to 4.5. There it is. So if this is, say, 1, 2, 3, 4, 4 and 4.5. So I think that's hiding behind the bar. So let's go to 4.5 and 5. There it is. It's hiding. So let's take this up to say 5 and 5.5. Okay, too far. So 4.75, 5.25. That's cool. Maybe a little bit too big. So let's maybe make it 5.75 or 5. Right, too small. 4.8, and I'll call that good. Good enough. It's a little bit too big, but oh, I can't help myself. 4.9, and then we'll do 5.2. All right, honest, that's it, 4.8. And then we'll increase this to say 110. Okay, so did that move it up? I don't think so. Let's do 160. So that moved it up. Okay, we're getting there. Let's go up to 200. I'm not sure what the units are that it's using. Like, it's not the same y-axis as I've been using, because I'd be at like 100 right there, right? So let's go up to 250. Bam. All right. I'm calling it. That's good. Well, where'd we go? All right. Well, I really appreciate you all sticking around, watching me futz with this plot. It's not perfect, but I would probably be the only person that would be able to tell you what's different from what they did. But I think it worked out pretty well. What do you think? Let me just try to make these kind of the same size. There you go. So again, mine is on the left, theirs is on the right, and yeah, I think I'm being too hard on myself. I think these look pretty bang on. The one thing that annoys me is this this CCBY in the bottom right corner. Should be over in the margin more, but I just don't have it there. And for whatever reason, this right-hand arrow is kind of hard. And yeah, but on the whole, like I said, I think it looks great. I think I did. I mean, I don't mean to be too, patting myself on the back, being self-congratulatory, but I think it looks pretty good as a pretty good representation of what they did in their version. I guess one thing I'm seeing is that my font is too big, that like the Alzheimer's disease and lower respiratory disease is going off the side of those. So maybe what I will do is go ahead and shrink those down really quick. I had label size. Let's take that to say 5.5. And then sometimes you only see things as being off when you kind of pull back and look at them fresh, right? And so it could probably go down a little bit further, but I think that looks pretty good. Let me know what you think. I'm sorry this went on for now 2.5 hours. I am tired. I need to go get some lunch. Join me back here on Friday morning at 9. I will do another live stream where I will show you how I would represent the data in a way that I think is easier to interpret. I would encourage you to go back, and if you haven't already, watch that that video, that critique I made on Monday, where I talked about how to represent this in a different representation. I drew a cartoon version that I would call a dot plot. And so if you're interested in that, by all means, tune back in Friday morning at the same time, and we will go over that. Otherwise, thanks again if you've made it all this way. Please keep practicing with these skills with ggplot2 and the other tools from R. Tell your friends what we're doing here, and I will see you next time for another episode of Code Club.